God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundation for the glory of thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth II, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of Parliament, the Leader of Opposition, Ministers of Cabinet, ex officio members, members of Parliament, the Chief Justice, and members of the judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask in thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace, now and always. Amen.
Please be seated. Proceedings of this Honorable House is now resumed.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of Messages and Announcements.
None.
Government Business, Bills, Second Reading, Continuation of Debate, Immigration Transition Amendment Bill 2021.
Last night, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition had completed his speech. He cut short his speech, he said, and completed his speech. Therefore, question is there any other member wishing to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Oh, let me keep this on. Good morning. Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak and show my support on this bill, Immigration Transition Amendment Bill 2021. It falls directly into my remit as the country's Minister of Health and Wellness. And with that noble calling and responsibility, the true understanding of the Public Health Department falling directly under my remit, I feel that it's warrant showing my support for the importance in which public health plays in the welfare and health of our society and in the best interest of all people. The temperature in 24 hours is different today, thank God. And there's nothing wrong with people demonstrating, voicing their concerns, and definitely reaching out to their elected representative when there are bills such as this that comes with a climate that questions. The elephant in the room is that we are in the middle of a pandemic. The elephant in the room is that there is no place for politics when it comes to the health and safety of our people. If that is what it's all about, And one can articulate the novel, Alice in Wonderland. That's exactly what our people were doing before this government was elected. Wandering as lost sheep, trying to find their very own place in their own country. Wondering and knowing whether this place is there. Wondering and knowing if my net worth is good enough. Wondering and knowing whether or not my surname is good enough. We are the people's government. That is spoken. We have been ridiculed by some in the shadows for making sure that our children are fed, because we put that at the priority. It is even being questioned why the lion's share of the budget is going to education. Yet we say our people need to be educated. What else can we do that is good enough? This floor is for standing up for our people. This honorable house is for showing that the people of our country are first. And when it comes to health care, when it comes to public health, that is stepping on my parade. And I will not allow politics to intervene when it comes to the best interest of our people. I too have been affected. There are questions surrounding the efficacies of this, but I don't understand where my colleague is coming from when one questions efficacy, but on the other side of their mouth, they're dying for the booster. Where's the wonderland there? You need to stop confusing your people. You need to be able to relate to your people, because you can't want the booster and then question efficacy. I'm all about facts. I'm not about popularity. I'm all about doing what the people have elected me to do. And I stand firm to know that with this team of the PAT government, that is what we will do. From the words of our Attorney General, QC, it speaks that we are not infringing on people's human rights. And we must understand that our people in their own country are the only ones that are entitled to both human rights and other rights, because we have nowhere else to go. It has almost been playing Russian roulette. How do you answer your phone? How do you look at the messages on your phone? How do you remain objective? I am stronger than they think. I am also wiser than they think. But whether I know it all, no, I don't. And that is why, under the guidance and leadership of my colleagues that sit here, and those who have guided my predecessors in the past, we respect what they bring to the table. The battle that is on right now, and not political battle, is that every day we stand here to defend why we support this bill. Yes, COVID is in our community, but one thing my predecessors have failed to do was to sensitize our people. Sensitize our people that at some point in time, anytime soon, we cannot and we will not, from science and data, eradicate this. We can no longer continue to pull funds out of the air because people do not want to be placed in the welfare state. People want to get back their independence. As inexperienced, and some may have referred to us as uneducated government, as we are, we have good old common sense to know one thing, that it is not sustainable. Do not misunderstand what I'm about to say, because money is not at the forefront here. We're all about making sure that this is done strategically, that we have a system that will work, and at least this inexperienced government provided a plan. A plan that continues to be developed even as we fight this fight and go down uncharted territory, but we will win. We have reached numbers that we were told could not be reached, and we will continue to go there. It is in the public's domain. Why could Sabrina, the Honorable Minister of Health, support such a bill when there's family that is questioned, that has been affected by the vaccine? Let me put for the record, and with full authority, to not make this into a us and them or a me. Yes, the second dose was taken, no mandate. But what that has done was to confirm something that we had an idea of, that there were hormonal issues. It's not the vaccine. So let's dispel that. Let's dispel that. They went into ground zero. I had family who just returned back from the States. And actually, I felt as though we were living in a cave. They have experienced safely what it's like to live with COVID. And they're back, and they're fine. We now have a clear path and can dispel that it's the vaccine. What I'm saying is, we have failed our people as well. Failing to educate them and sensitizing them to the truth as to exactly where we are right now. Coming to grips with reality that this is something we will have to live with. But we want to do it, the caring government that we are, safely. What I would love to see is demonstrations out there, placards out there, saying, government, please do bills so that we, Caymanians, can have a fair chance at accessing land, at accessing affordable health care. And for those civil servants who have worked tirelessly over the years that can barely make ends meet on what little pension they so get, that's what we should be marching for, not when it comes to this level of health care. That's what I want to see my Caymanians out there. And I task our churches to do this as you have preached to your congregants. Faith and trust those who are here to lead. I stand here to let you know I am not here for popularity, but I will do good by all of my people. I will do good for all of my people. And I would never assent to anything that would put my people at any greater risk. We are here deliberating a bill that I will show support from, so that I can tell the people of this country that we hear your cries. We know your pleas. As a small business owner myself, I know what it is like. And trust me, we get it. We understand. And we know that the pride that our Caymanians have, they don't want to be in the position where they have to come to their elected leaders for a handout. That's not who our people are. But we also identify that what is being created right now, people are left as though they are looking for welfare. And I can assure you that you will get a decision sometime this week what assistance this government is putting forward to assist those persons who are not seeking welfare, but just need that gap filler where our corporates and their employers, for whatever reason, cannot help them because they are placed in isolation based on what strategies are in place right now. We understand that the dials will have to change as we navigate our way through this. And thank God, none of our children, no one has ended up in the intensive care, life support. So it tells me, based on the science, based on the high vaccination uptake that we're having, that there is some form of a protective shield to help our people. I must implore everyone to continue to trust, continue to educate yourself as we will do the same. and as your Ministry of Health, I can assure you that communications from public health and cross-ministry collaboration in order to get this working will continue. What I don't want to be misunderstood here is the fact that we are not here, at least this side of the aisle, playing politics. You cannot jump from side to side, sit on the fence, as it has been alluded to, and then think only once. When it feels as though it's working your way, then anything this government does, our idea. This is not a I. This is not a them. This is all of us. And this is why there is no political room when it comes to healthcare, public health, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And when you're even going to go putting nationality into this, now you're hitting me to the core. I am happily married to a Jamaican. My biological father is a Jamaican. I have true friends that are Jamaicans. And in my previous life in my business, a lot of those Jamaicans were given the right to remain and reside and has remained upstanding citizens and continue to contribute to this country. Don't you put that into this. And for emphasis, please look at who was the captain of the ship when we introduced visas for Jamaicans. So don't you get on this good train when it's convenient to you. That style of playing politics is done. And I am here, confident, able, and to many people who failed us before we were even sworn in, I hope what has been demonstrated in less than 6 months will prove that all we need is a chance. Give us a chance. None of us on either side are experts when it comes to this COVID disease. Even scientists are baffled. But what I'm telling you about is not about who can make money from this either. Not at the expense of our most vulnerable. We are here to be fair and balanced. Your name, your network, or the color of your skin has no place when it comes to our fight in COVID. I implore each and every one to understand and respect the role that we play as your elected leaders, and respect us. We hear you. We feel you. I know the parents right now that are in isolation, some have had 2 bouts, and they honestly don't know where their next income is coming from. We hear you, but we're also working hand in hand with the civil service, who has to also adjust their settings, adjust the holes in their belts in order to be our facilitators and our supporters. But until we hold hands together, stop playing politics, the campaign is over. That is the only how we will get through this. To those who are reaching out from the utilities companies, we understand. Your workers are in isolation. We understand and we hope that no natural disasters pass our way, because I can tell you what, there's going to have to be some shift in our behaviors. And we're trying our best to get ahead of that. And this is why it is important to just give us a chance. It was actually comical at some points last night and saddened. There was a mix of emotions when I heard the exchange and support and non-support of, and dissecting what was convenient for one's political campaign. Still, wandering in the wilderness. we are getting our people back on track. We're getting them now to reciprocate and work along with their elected government. And with time, we will prove that we will be a governing government that is true to our word and inclusive for all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and God bless these beloved Cayman Islands.
Does another member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The Honorable Deputy Governor.
All right. Mr. Speaker, I want to just spend a few minutes to settle clearly what the thoughts of the civil service is in relation to this matter that has been debated now over the last 2 days. Mr. Speaker, the member from Red Bay read out an article which I think captures my views on civil service and how we will play our part in reducing the spread of COVID-19 in our community. Mr. Speaker, I had a Zoom call with civil servants across the entire civil service. Many hundreds of civil servants were there. And I made it very clear 2 important things that we were under consideration. One was to join the elected government and to look at mirror provisions in the Public Service Management Act that would require new civil servants to be vaccinated. That would be non-Caymanian civil servants. That also would apply to persons renewing their contracts as well. Mr. Speaker, again, I promised the civil service that we would consult with them and as to how we would make that happen, and I intend to do so. But my view, Mr. Speaker, is that we shouldn't have 2 separate systems in our country where persons in the private sector are treated one way and persons in the civil service should be treated a different way. Mr. Speaker, my view is that the entire public service should be under the same rules. In other words, the rules that the civil service will apply should also apply to the wider public service. Mr. Speaker, so to recap, the view of the civil service is that we should follow the elected government and put similar provisions in the Public Service Management Act, and I believe the Public Service Management Law that would require non-Caymanians joining the service and non-Caymanians who are in the service to have the COVID vaccine on renewal of their contracts and those coming into the service. Again, we will consult, and I will hear what the concerns of the civil servants are. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, and I think this one now is more of a moot point, I've listened to what the members have said here, is that there were considerations of requiring our frontline workers to be vaccinated. And Mr. Speaker, it's a real concern. Some of our frontline agencies, CBC, Travel Cayman, who deal with passengers, travelers every day, their numbers in terms of vaccination numbers are low. However, I think listening to the elected leaders here, they have said that they do not support vaccines, as forcing Caymanians to be vaccinated. And while the terms and conditions of the civil service is a matter for His Excellency and myself, we certainly are not going to push forward legislation that doesn't have something as serious as this without the support of my colleagues in cabinet. So that, I want to make that very clear. But Mr. Speaker, while we may not go down that road, it does not mean that we do not have, and when I say we, I mean the entire government, and I think all members of this House, does not have a concern for Caymanians and all frontline workers, that they are putting themselves and their families and their colleagues at serious risk when they are not vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to repeat what was said by the member of Red Bay, and I beg your indulgence of he repeated what I said. I'm going to say it again. Mr. Speaker, one of my greatest fears from in March of last year when we shut down, and I was in the NEOC every day with civil servants, sending them out to deal with COVID-positive persons, some of who were not compliant. And today, as head of the civil service, knowing that a large number of civil servants are also being exposed to COVID-positive persons, that they get sick because they're not vaccinated, and God forbid, they die. I do not want to go to a funeral of a civil servant. I really, really, really don't. But, Mr. Speaker, I believe if we don't see a change in some persons' stance and attitudes, that it could happen. I know there are persons who are dogmatic and saying, I will never take the vaccine. Okay, Mr. Speaker, I will respect that. But what I also ask civil servants to do on the Zoom call is to really think through what they're doing when they send a YouTube video from unknown persons or send information that they've read on some obscure website that says don't take the vaccine, or that it just gives information that I believe is not true about the vaccine to their colleagues and their friends and their families. So they are not only deciding that I shouldn't take it, but they're also influencing other persons not to take it. So think that through, Mr. Speaker. If I have encouraged one of my colleagues not to take it, the vaccine, and they get sick, and God forbid die, how am I going to feel about that? What am I going to say to their families? What am I going to say to their colleagues? Are you going to admit that I sent them information that turned out to not be true and now they're dead? I'm sorry? That's not going to help. So, Mr. Speaker, I again implore, encourage, beg civil servants, especially those on the front line, to do the right thing and get vaccinated. Protect yourself and your families, and, Mr. Speaker, the public, because we dealing with COVID-positive persons coming in at the airport, if a civil servant picks up the COVID, they can pass it on to another traveler or someone in Foster's or one of their colleagues or their family. So we have to be responsible. Mr. Speaker, I think the civil service should lead in this area. We should lead in this area. The civil service should accept those who cannot be vaccinated because of medical grounds. Otherwise, we should be 100%. 70% is not good enough. 75, 80, why not be 100%? We strive for 100% in everything else that we do. So why not this, Mr. Speaker? It's life-saving. 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 Mr. Speaker, these are serious times in our islands. The Minister for Health said it very eloquently earlier, is that we are facing new challenges in the civil service, in the wider public service. I just got off a call with a number of civil servants, including the team from HSA, in terms of how are we responding to what's happening in our community now. Well, how are we dealing with persons who have been told at a moment's notice, you need to isolate? We are working overtime to ensure that we provide those persons help and assistance. We're setting up a wellness team. We're bringing on a wellness manager so that to be able to be in a position where we get ahead of this issue. And no one is calling the Premier or anyone in this chamber and saying, I need help. And that we in the civil service and wider public service are on top of this so that we are checking on people on a daily basis, we're answering your calls, we're providing you with all of the assistance that we need. That is our mandate in the public service. In the civil service, we say that our purpose is to make the lives of those we serve better, and we have to take that very seriously. And there are people right now, as the minister said, who is hurting, who is not being properly communicated with, who is having to call, not getting a response. We have to fix that, and we will, Mr. Speaker. We are working overtime to make it happen. I want to, first of all, apologize to all the people who have not received the kind of service that they deserve and that we expect. And we will get this right, Mr. Speaker. We will get this right. This is not a nationality thing. This is a humankind thing. We want to treat everyone with courtesy and respect and make sure that we can deliver on our mandates. No member of the government's phone should ring about this. No member of the opposition, no member of parliament phone should ring to say, I'm in government isolation and nobody has called me for days. That should not happen, Mr. Speaker. And we will make sure that we silence those critics. Mr. Speaker, I want to wind up by again saying how I started, is that I care about every civil servant. I do not want to attend any funerals. I am encouraging every civil servant, especially those on the front line, to get vaccinated, to not share information that is not credible or verifiable with your colleagues, because you need to think through the ramifications of your decisions. And let us do everything possible to have the civil service where we are 100%, if we possibly can, vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, as head of civil service, I will continue to engage with civil servants, listen to their concerns, do my best to address the concerns, but we will be moving forward with this legislation. It will come to cabinet again very soon, but I would have consulted with the team on this. But I do not see how we can have two separate systems in our country. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. And I thank all of the members of this House for the care and concern that they have shown for the people of these islands. It is so important that we unify and come together and ensure that when we do open, Mr. Speaker, that we do it in a way that no other country has been able to do. The Deputy Premier said it yesterday. The Minister of Tourism said it yesterday. We have this amazing opportunity to achieve something that no other country in the world has been able to achieve, to open safely without having to go into a background and into another lockdown, and to not have our people becoming seriously sick and dying. The way to do that is vaccinations. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Speaker.
The member from Bordentown East.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since you called on me, I'll stand. I really didn't want to get up and speak, because there's been so much contribution in this honorable House that covered and covers almost everything, and I really didn't want to be repetitive in this honorable House. And I think we need to pause for a moment and recognize both sides, the government and the opposition, for the wonderful job that we have done over the last 18 months to get ourselves to this point. We are admired by the world and envied, I am told, by Eastern Caribbean islands and in some are neighboring islands, that when we had press conferences, they would wait till we had our press conference and then emulate what we did after our press conference. We ought to be proud as Caymanians, and we need to be proud for each other. It's not about us or them. And when I came into this honorable House, I think when I got up, Mr. Speaker, I said that I do not want to be on the opposition side. This is my first time being on the opposition side. I really don't like it. I see myself as a problem solver, and I like to be working. I get very bored very quickly. And I really don't want to be a person that opposes for opposing's sake. I don't want to be that type of person. And that's the reason why I really wasn't going to get up and speak. But I think that my constituents, and Cayman, being a former Minister of Health, for what that's worth, I didn't get an OBE. Boy, that still hurt. But I don't know who put out the list. But they say it was some from this side. I don't know. But I must pause and say I thank the Honorable Deputy Premier for his sentiments yesterday. It meant a lot to me. I hope you meant it. And, you know, I thank you very much. It was the first time that someone orated in that fashion publicly, how much they appreciated. I did a lot that people don't appreciate. But if you think that getting up and speaking some 70 languages or more, some days I did 2 languages. But
Well, Minister, sorry, member, but I like you being blunt in the bluntest way possible.
Trust me, I got calls from South Africa and all over the place. And as silly as it may have seemed to some, we were communicating with our people. And, I remember getting in the elevator, and the security guards are from Philippines and from other places in Asia. And they would say, "Can you say our language?" And people would call and they would message from all over the world. And I say that to say that we all have something to offer, And I don't mind taking the menial jobs and the jobs that everyone else is going to laugh at. I have lost all my shame from a long time ago. And, so I applaud the government, because the government is doing what, if we were on that side, would be trying to do, open up and open up safely. There's a little error made, and I will touch on that. And that's how it is when you're running a government. You're not going to get it all right. There's no perfect government. And, sometimes it's trial and error. And then we move forward, we get new advice. But I want to say, in terms of, Mr. Speaker, in terms of advice, and, one of the ministers had mentioned to me that one of the things that he think that they made mistakes in is that they took the advice for Bible that was being given. And I just want to say, I don't want you all to fail, And I have a lot of children, so I have a 4-year-old still and a 6-year-old who isn't vaccinated, and I worry about that every day. And we'll get to that. But, Mr. Speaker, this is our Cayman Islands, and we need to respect the fraternity. All 19 of us, we're all duly elected. And I think that we have something to offer here too. It wasn't easy shutting down the country. I can tell you that. It was not easy. A lot of people kicking and screaming, a lot of lawsuits, same thing. But we still did what we had to do. But I can tell you all that my mantra as former Minister of Health, what I would always say is, the thing about it is the type of person I am, I'm very respectful. That's how I was trained, that's how I grew up. You need to respect science, but don't forget common sense. And that's sometimes we lean so hard on science that we forget that we have our own thought process. And there's lots of times when we were in caucus, former government, that we asked certain pointed questions and they realized that they had to change course. So I can tell you all that we had as much input into what was put into regulations or law back then. And I tell you all to do the same. So why am I here sounding like I'm praising the government? But I am, I can only say that I thank this honorable speaker for giving me this opportunity to get up and speak. I must start with saying I'm fully vaccinated, I'm one of the first persons to get vaccinated. In fact, I'm the 3rd person to be vaccinated, and Honorable Minister came and snuck his way in and became uninvited, and and got stuck. Let me tell you about getting vaccinated and you're not really sure and something happening in this magnitude that the world, no one knows what's happening around the world. Everybody's confused, everybody's trying to figure it out, and a vaccine becomes available, and Donald Trump commands the vaccine, and Joe Biden was the first person to take it. Look at that. It's very funny. The Republicans commandeered, and the Democrats were the first to put their arm out. So, warp speed. And we have to we have to clap the Republican president for pushing that forward. But none of us knew what this vaccine was going to do to us. Not one of us knew whether we would fall down in 3 months. I'm just happy to still be going. And you know, it was Pfizer, so I like Pfizer, I like that brand. But I won't say any more. But but you know, when you go to war, you don't know whether they're going to be killed or not. You go to war and you don't know whether you're coming back home or not. It's something similar. We took the vaccine for this country, and we don't know whether we were going to fall down in a month's time, you know, because this had went at warp speed, as Deputy Premier said, and we didn't know. So all I'm saying is I am not here to belittle or to put down or the government. That's not my style, you know. I don't think that not one of you over there wake up in the morning and say, I want to do something bad to the Cayman Islands. You know, none of you. So I know your hearts are in the right place. And sometimes we get it wrong, or we don't get it as right as we deemed, you know. So with my presentation, should be short, shouldn't be no more than about 2 hours. But I think that I lean on the honorable words of the Premier when he was asked the question at the press conference, does it have to be 80%? And the honorable Premier said, doesn't really have to be 80%, but near enough. I think he can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think we're there. I think, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, sitting on this opposition side, for what it's worth, I think that we need to stop talking about vaccinations. The vaccinations will fall in place. People will see that we're up and running for almost a year and nothing has happened to us. We're still here being productive citizens. And when they recognize that if we even catch COVID, that we're more than likely not going to die, people will automatically fall in line. I mean, we're talking about putting mandations in for work permit workers and all kinds of other persons. And I'm saying to myself, what is the percentage? Does anyone know what is the percentage of work permit workers that have been vaccinated? Maybe we've already had 90%, you know, or haven't been vaccinated, you know? So I'm saying sometimes it's much to do about nothing, you know? So I think in some respects the government is going on the right track because there's lots of pressure and the pressure now, the pipe not bust yet, but there's a lot of pressure and it will be on the government's finances. And you know, I think people are just getting weary now of being border closed. The people want to open up. As I know plenty of Caymanians are saying, look, don't open up that border, don't open up that border. And then we're saying, but you're selfish. We have 4,000 people out of work, you know? And we you know, as the Bible says, you know, about the 99 sheep. If one go missing, you know, the one is still just as important. So I think we need to open our minds. We need to have confidence. And I wish that we could have done it together as a group, opposition and government, so that the country would have seen that we are working together for the good of everybody, and all 19 constituencies are being represented, you know? That's not exactly the case, but I think we can still work to get there, right? So, what am I up here saying? You know? Obviously, I got up for a reason. And I guess everybody understands that I'm fully vaccinated and I'm not anti-vaccination. So I think we need to, I mean, you have the bill, the bill is before us, and we're talking about mandations and in some sense, and giving people the choice to either get it or not come, or etc. And what I want to say is that when the vaccine came out first in January, man, I was so excited. I was a little hesitant in caucus when they said that I had to be one of the first ones to take it. Honorable Minister of Education can tell you, I said, I'm not being no first one to take this. And I said that, and then we started getting some information and you know, from Public Health England and from some of the local doctors that I respect here and who think I mean well, because, you know, there's a lot of mistrust for that fraternity in terms of, you know, what the end game is. So I decided that I was going to take it. Now, the UK was the first country on the 2nd of December 2020 to approve a COVID vaccine that was tested in a large clinical trial. It tested on more than 43,000 people. It had shown that Pfizer vaccine was 95% effective at preventing the disease when it was measured a week after participants are given its second dose. Mr. Speaker, fast forward to date, what we have learned is that the Pfizer and Moderna rely on RNA encased in a lipid particle that ferries it into cells, where it is used as a template to generate a viral protein that stimulates the immune system. The AstraZeneca's vaccine uses DNA that is shuttled into cells inside a harmless virus unrelated to the coronavirus. So, Mr. Speaker, when we heard 95% in January, felt very good, because I was all there jumping up saying, if I get this vaccine, I can't catch COVID. So after I got that vaccine, I was all over the place. I was seeing a couple other places. But I'm just saying, but we had the vaccine, so we felt we couldn't catch COVID. And then afterwards, we started learning that you could possibly get COVID after you took the vaccine. And then afterwards, we started learning that you could possibly die after you got the vaccine. Then we started learning all kinds of stuff. And I started to, I mean, at this point, you can't just sit down and not take note of what's going on. You have to pay attention. So I don't think it'll ever get to the point where I will be anti-vaccine, but we have to pay attention, because the situation is the way that this was put together it came together very fast, you know? So we need to pay attention because it's still a lot of unknowns. So I say to you all, let's not put a lot of emphasis on vaccines. Let vaccines take its course. Let persons educate themselves, let their doctors educate them. In fact, I am all for more vaccines being brought in and the doctors being able to talk directly with their patients. And I think we would probably see an uptake in vaccines once the doctors were able to deal directly with their patients. So I just wanted to mention something, Mr. Speaker. We had a situation with CCC School, right? And we need to be careful what we're doing because we say we're trying to do things to ensure that Caymanians had an edge on this situation. We had a person who was double vaccinated, and when it broke out, their child was in the class at CCC where the child tested positive. So obviously everybody needed to be tested. They tested, they were negative, right? What they told them is that you need to do 14 days isolation, even though you tested negative. You with me? Now, in the Cayman Islands, we have one of the best managed COVID systems in the world. We have one of the highest vaccination rates. Now here, what we're doing, we're telling people now whose children are in class with someone who's test positive that they need to isolate for 14 days, even if they're double vaccinated. You with me? But what we're saying is if you come off the flight from Miami or Jamaica, where the disease is more prevalent, that if you're double vaccinated, all you need to do is just 7 days. You see what I'm saying? So there's a problem there. And Caymanians are up in arms about it. So you see why I'm saying that everyone in this house, all 19 of us, can offer some contribution because we have all constituents. I have the largest constituency in the island, in the country, you know? And we all, now public health said the incubation period is 14 days. So we throw that 14 days on the persons who are tested by Georgetown Primary School, Prospect Primary, CCC School, all Caymanians, most of them, you know. People who are coming off the flight, we tell them, let's get double jab, and all you gotta do is spend 7 days, right? So that is a point that I think that we need to, it's not, public health needs to address that, because if we are saying that we should give the edge to persons who come off the flight, I think we need to give the same trust in our system that we have managed COVID here better than most countries connected or around us, and that we need to trust ourselves more. We are saying that we trust the US and Jamaica more, that have higher viralities, cases of COVID, than we trust our own country. So I hope that that point was made, because I got a call from a small businessman. And Mr. Speaker, these are the things that hurt, because there were times when we were the government that we didn't have the answer for everything. And as these things come up, then you need to try to make policy or This is the message that I get from somebody on the 28th of September. Good afternoon, John. Hope all is well. Checking you about the government assistance I heard the government talking about. I'm in quarantine now because my stepdaughter was in the class with the child that tested positive today. I need to know what kind of assistance do self-employed people get to sustain themselves for 14 days without working. Big problem. No. So I'm saying that we probably have a lot of people in that situation. I had a teacher that lives in Bordentown but is from Georgetown Primary School. Called to say she live alone, she don't have nobody to help her, and could we please go? So I had to send the office assistant to Foster's, get on the phone with her, shop, and take groceries and so forth. I'm just saying that these things needs to be addressed. So, Mr. Speaker, my thing is if we think that we had rising up yesterday out there, which we need to respect what the people are able to do. You wait till the vaccine come for children. That is a very sensitive thing, you know. We're talking about children under 12, a whole generation, and we're not sure about the vaccine. And you know, people already had that rumor about you won't be able to have children, you won't be able to produce after, and all kinds of stuff. And these are questions, you know, that no one really has all the answers to, because these children are going to go another 20 years before they even think about having children, and we don't know what the effects are going to be. So we need to pay attention. You know, we need to pay attention and ensure that we get the right advice and don't get it just from one person. And you all try to get some trusted people, doctors that you've known over 25 years, to try to come in and make some sense of what has been given to you. I say that because I care about this Cayman Islands, and I care about the government achieving. I have some very good friends over there. I have some family members over there, and I do not want the government to fail. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that there needs to be emphasis put on other things. I mean, this is only my personal opinion, Mr. Speaker, but I think we need to build up our immune systems. Let's get persons out in the community from public health or otherwise, nurses, doctors, out in all the 19 constituencies, giving lectures and giving out packets, I've seen in some places in the world, with things that you can do to build up your immune system. Let's put some money into our clinics in each district and give them the vitamins or otherwise, whether that's vitamin C, whether that's calcium and magnesium and zinc, and vitamin C, I said, and vitamin E. All the elements. I mean, the doctors would be able to tell us what we need to do, and I'm sure everybody's body is different. So these are the things that I think that we should be working on. So my wife said to me, she says, you need to be careful out there because people come up to you, you're a public figure, people want to hug you, they want to shake your hand, and I'm sure people are, all our spouses and our friends and families are saying the same thing to all of us. Be careful with that coronavirus. So I say to her, I'm double vaccinated. I take vitamin C every morning. I take magnesium. I take zinc. I say, I don't take the Pfizer every day, every 3 days. but Mr. Speaker, I feel I'm protected. So I feel good about taking my mask off. I tell you the story about masks as we talk about trying to get back to some normalcy. I mentioned it to the CMO publicly, and even Deputy Premier said he watch all the press conferences and stuff. I was the first person in the Cayman Islands to talk about masks, right? And the CMO told me no, that the mask, and Honorable Minister would remember, mask was for the healthcare workers, and there weren't enough in the world, and Donald Trump had started stopping shipments coming to Cayman and anywhere else in the world. So I went out and without the Premier's knowledge and without caucus knowledge, and I had some friends in Miami that did some things for me. And through a businessman here, and they said that they could get around the system. And before you knew it, I had 20,000 masks here in Cayman. And I didn't play politics with it. I gave every constituency, and even my good friend and cousin benefited from that behind the scenes, but he must have went and put it up on Facebook, and Ezra had found out. And what a mess that was. He called me. He gave me a good lashing. And what I did then is I called him and gave him more. But I'm just saying to say that we need to also do things. Nobody advised me to do that, you know. So I'm just saying that when we're in government, we still need to use our own common sense. I'll draw a conclusion. A situation that we had in caucus, all right, with the mental health facility. And I say this to draw some context, Mr. Speaker, and I hope you allow me to. We had a mental health facility which we found out there's only one person bidding for the mental health facility. One bid. And I'm saying, well, something is wrong. So I said, let me see the outline business case.
You mean to build?
Yes, to build the mental health facility. So I said, something is wrong. But they don't know my background. And if I don't know, if I think that you don't care, you're not going to know what I know. But I say, let me see the outline business case, because that's the first thing you do. And I recognized that we had a problem, so I went to the governor. I discussed it. I said, do we do this in the UK? We didn't do that. I won't get into the minutiae of all that we did, but I'm just telling you that there were some things that were not policy, they weren't law, and they weren't regulation. And I'm saying this to you all for reasons that you all still have to use your good common sense to get things right for these here Cayman Islands. And we had a high bid, which was 25% over the RFP, right? An outline business case. And I says, Dwayne Seymour, John Butcher from Gun Square, not doing that. I understand that we're not going over 10% of any outline business case under my watch. So I says, what we need to do is remove these clauses. When I asked why these policies were in place, they say they were just rule of thumb. You understand what I'm saying? Where you've got to put $2 million up front, and you got to take $2 million off the bat. So I said, the governor said it's not done in the UK. And I'm saying to you all that I ask questions, and we have to ask questions, right? People think that if you're from Gun Square, you're not got no sense. But I know that's what they think. But I said, let's chop this up into 5 pieces rather than just putting out one. Let's have 5 packages. And Mr. Speaker, when we put that back out for bid, we never got just one bid. We got 11 bids. House of Parliament, you hear what I'm saying? We got 11 bids because I am a fair man and I want opportunity for all. So in essence, what we were doing were secretly single sourcing. All right? They think I don't know. But anyhow, we saved $2 million. Right? And I didn't overrun in what they said it was going to with the first bid. And there were 3 or 4 contractors got opportunities from the different packages. You see how we spread things around? What I'm saying to you all, and I mentioned that, not trying to tout my own self, but to say that we have our own and we'll have our own questions to ask. And don't be scared to do so. You are the person in charge. You're the ministers. And I want everything best for the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up my small contribution and just highlighting and trying to encourage the government to ensure that whatever is put out there, that they have their hand on it, that their print is also all over that. And I have a lot of respect for Program Board. I have a lot of respect. The Deputy Governor knows how much respect I have for him, and the Attorney General, and the team, Darlene and everybody. And sorry to just single you out, Darlene, but sorry. But we still, trust me, you have a lot more leverage than you think. So I just want to give, as former Minister of Health, for what that's worth, the little mistake that was made with the 5-day opening up, the 5-day quarantine, sorry. All we had to do, somebody change the regulations in terms of when you had to do a PCR test in the US. Now I hear that you're getting it 1 foot on the jet bridge, 1 foot on the plane, and they got something stick up your nose and you're taking it just as you get on the plane. That wasn't how it was intended. If you look at the science of this coronavirus, 5 to 7 days is when this shows up. So if we try to cover that, if we had, in my opinion, 72 hours before the flight, then when they arrive in Cayman, we test them again. Why are we testing them in Cayman? And I know the CMO wanted to get rid of the testing on arrival long time ago, and I wouldn't allow him to move it. Because I say I trust my own people. And I trust in Walmart and Walgreens. All right? So, test on arrival, because we're saying that when we test you on arrival and you're negative, we know that you're negative. Right? We know that you didn't come in this country with anything, even if you develop it 7 days after. Now, if you do 3 days before and you had still the 5-day quarantine, that would be your testing on day 9. And if you even want to go a little further, even after you release them on a negative, on 2 negatives PCR tests, you could go a little further within the 9 to 14 days and said we can do rapid testing at the hotels, you know. There are some good rapid tests coming on the market, so forth, that should have been recommended a long time ago. So there's ways that this thing can be done, you know, that I think that narrows, because you're not going to completely eliminate the risk, you know, but we can narrow it down, you know, because we need to find a way to live with COVID in this Cayman Islands, but we need to do it safely. So, Mr. Speaker, I am all for you all in your journey in trying to open this country back up. I am not for mandatory vaccination because there are some concerns now. We're asking people to be mandatorily vaccination and join the bandwagon of mandationists. And there's something different about what we thought the vaccine would be. So we need to respect people's choice, in my opinion. They will see the vaccinated of us moving around and going about our life, and they feel restricted staying home because they don't want to go because they're not they're not vaccinated, so they can't go. You know? They can't go out anymore and enjoy themselves because they're not vaccinated, and the risk is more for them in dying. There's a lot of cases where people said they wish they got vaccinated and only able to call their families with 1 hour's notice to tell them that they're saying their final goodbyes. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to make this long, and I just wanted to mention a couple points and give the government some encouragement that they're going down the right road in what they're trying to do. There are going to be some little mistakes, but I'm not for mandatory vaccination because of all the things that I mentioned. You know, I think that we need to spend time on other things, like I said, in building up the immune system. And then that's our firewall, you know, and let everybody be proud because of that. And during this time, even if you're going to open up sometime in November or December, whenever it is, the Premier will announce, our immune systems will be built up, and we would be ready, and persons would feel secure, you know. So I have about 12 pages here, but I'm not going to use them because I feel that enough has been said, and it's hard to say anymore. I just want to leave with you all again what I used to make decisions. I want you all to, and well, I wanted to ask the Honorable Attorney General if this mandation of vaccination for certain categories, if this was going to have a sunset clause, or was this going to be in public health forever? I don't know what the intentions are, but I wanted to ask that. And I think when we say going to 200 people, you know, let's just live. Let's live. Open up. No restrictions. We have enough. You did your work. We did our work. Some people water, some people plant, some people prune. We did our work. We got 78% in some respects. We did our work. Let's open up. Let's open up safely. Let's help our people protect themselves from this virus. For those who don't want to get vaccinated right now, let's help them, get them information, have sessions in different constituencies with information about taking the vaccine constantly throughout the whole. Don't stop. Don't think that people have enough information already. You know, we don't know who's talking to them. Maybe it's some doctor too. So I will close by saying, and Mr. Speaker, I didn't get to mention yesterday, I heard people getting up about Dr. Linda McField in terms of, I wanted to send my public condolences also that she's my family member, our grandmothers or sisters, and I just wanted to put that out there. But to the government, I say to you all, respect science, but don't forget common sense. I thank you all. I'm against mandatory vaccination, not because I don't believe in vaccines, but because of the unique situation that we're in having 78%, and with the vaccine now seeing different signs and weakness in terms of how it was intended to protect you. I think let's put our energy on immune systems and let's open up. I thank you all, and God bless these Cayman Islands. That was much about nothing, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you for bringing some levity into a very serious situation. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The Honorable the Premier. You need the podium? Yeah, he's going to get it.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to hear anybody get up in this House again and say they didn't intend to speak when they end up saying they had 16 more pages to go, but they weren't going to use it. Because those two things don't go together, sir. Somewhere along the way there was intention. A lot of it too. Mr. Speaker, I want to first thank all my colleagues on this side who have spoken. I want to thank the Honourable Deputy Premier and Minister for Border Control and Labour for his presentation on this bill, of course, and on the earlier bill, the companion bill. Mr. Speaker, we have heard a lot of conjecture, a lot of comment, and a lot of disappointing things coming from the other side, which I will touch on a bit. But I want to start off by, saying, how did we get here, where we're at now? We've had statements indicating that we ended up with community spread because of something this government did, right? That was effectively where the member from Red Bay ended up yesterday. And there have been other indications. Mr. Speaker, the statement
that has been, or comments that have been made suggest that had we maintained a 14-day quarantine, we'd be okay. Interesting, Mr. Speaker. When in March of this year, the former Premier supported shortening the quarantine period to 10 days for vaccinated people, presumably on the basis of advice. Advice which he, or a proposal which he suggests was illogical and didn't follow the science. This government subsequently, again on the basis of advice, lowered the quarantine period to 5 days for vaccinated travelers on the basis that there would be a pre-flight PCR test 3 days ahead. Now, circumstances change over time. What we discovered was that people were able to get PCR tests an hour before the flight, rapid test. But be that as it may, so that shortened the time frame, but be that as it may, what we have learned through our investigations of quarantine breaches, and what we have learned up until yesterday morning, Mr. Speaker, is that there is no evidence that any of the positives that we have had in terms of community spread are connected to any persons who have a travel history. So, Mr. Speaker, that suggests very strongly that our current issue with community spread is not as a result of the policy of having 5 days quarantine set out in the regulations. Mr. Speaker, there was also a suggestion that it was because of the tags not being included. All of the investigations that were conducted by the police indicate that the quarantine breaches that were suspected or reported involve people going in, not the quarantine persons coming out of the protective envelope. And Mr. Speaker, the reality is, while we do not know, we have not been able to tell how it happened, it has happened. And that is very likely how it happened. It is very likely because of people breaching the quarantine requirements with someone going into the quarantine envelope and then going back out, not the traveler. So I just wanted to clarify that to begin with, Mr. Speaker. We are where we are, and we've had this quarantine breach. Sorry, we've had this outbreak, we've had community spread, and the result of that, the initial aspect of that involving the Georgetown Primary School was what resulted in the government putting a pause on its reopening plan. Paused it on phase 3. We realized very quickly, Mr. Speaker, that the country wasn't ready. And in fact, to be perfectly honest, the services that we need to provide to the people to be able to manage the public health issues and manage all of the human-related issues connected to isolation and further quarantine, we needed to address some of those issues as well. But Mr. Speaker, we are going to address those issues. They are being worked on now. The Deputy Governor talked quite a bit about those earlier, and we will be making a lot of progress there. Mr. Speaker, the bill that we are talking about right now, and the bill that we have voted on previously, the companion bill, is an attempt to push every button that we can find and pull every lever we can find to increase the level of vaccination in this country. Because we are certain that the vaccinations reduce people getting sick and reduce death. Mr. Speaker, we are not like other countries, bigger countries. We've had 2 deaths in this country. One, a traveler that we didn't know. One person who came back in who had connections here, but wasn't a Caymanian. But the first time we have a Caymanian who dies, Mr. Speaker, or somebody that we all know and love, whether they're Caymanian or not, in this community, it is going to be painful. It is going to be something that wears on us. Mr. Speaker, we are not in a country where the death of one person or 2 people or whatever become just mere statistics. These are going to be real people that we all know. In bigger countries, there is an understandable, broader perspective where it becomes about statistics, where it becomes about managing it and keeping the deaths down and this type of thing. For us, it's going to make it all too real. So, Mr. Speaker, while there's a lot of criticism about pushing vaccinations, about requiring changes to the laws that mean that somebody who's coming in to the country has to be vaccinated on a work permit, who's coming in, or somebody who is here, or someone who is even a permanent resident. I don't think that we should be apologizing for trying our utmost to try to get the vaccinations as high as possible in this country. I know people, Mr. Speaker, let me put it in a different context. I think we have gotten to this point where we have community spread because people got tired of complying. People got tired of a year and a half of basically having to adhere, having to do this, having to do that. And they got complacent. I don't want us to get complacent, Mr. Speaker, about the need to have vaccinations in this country. I heard the member from Botetown East saying earlier that we shouldn't be focused on vaccinations. We should be focused on vitamins. Now, he said a lot of nice things, and a lot of what he said I agreed with. But, Mr. Speaker, one thing that I don't agree with is that it is just about vitamins. This, Mr. Speaker, is an unprecedented situation for this country and the last 10 governments, we have not had any problem like this. We have not had to deal with a situation like this. This is real life. This is not some allegory that starts off as confused as it was, talking about Alice in Wonderland. This is real life, Mr. Speaker. This is real people. And as much as people seem to think that there won't be deaths in the country if we don't continue to push for the level of protections that we need, I'd ask them to stop being myopic and look at the countries around us. Look at Bermuda. If I got on the phone with David Burt today, he would give anything, I'm sure, to avoid the deaths that they've had. We all heard the comments and the pain from our colleagues in the British Virgin Islands when they had that significant outbreak in July and a lot of deaths. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are in an enviable position in terms of vaccinations. We are. We have one of the highest rates in the world. The question is it enough to prevent us having to look at instead of a statistic, a real life situation with people that we know dying? I don't want to be in that situation, sir. And I have to say, I'm disappointed with some of the comments I've heard about vaccinations. I heard the member from Red Bay yesterday adopting this narrative. I'm assuming it's for the sake of political expediency, adopting this narrative that the vaccines are experimental. But yet, as the Minister for Health pointed out earlier, he also said he can't wait for the booster. You can't mix messages on things that are this critically important, Mr. Speaker, when it means life and death. Whatever the statistics are for people, you know, and the survivability of COVID, we know that it can get very painful. We've seen our sister overseas territories, countries or other countries around the Caribbean who have been in that situation. We are trying to do something here, as has been stated by many of my colleagues, that is unprecedented, certainly in the Caribbean, probably in most of the world, to be able to reopen successfully without having significant sickness and death, without overwhelming our healthcare system. And Mr. Speaker, when I talk about that, I'm not just talking about having people with COVID in the hospital and those numbers overwhelming our hospital system. All the hospitals, including the public and private ones. I'm also talking about the resources that get removed by those people who are sick from others who are sick for other reasons and who need assistance and who need life-saving support for other reasons. Those things go on every day, Mr. Speaker. They happen all the time. Life goes on. Lockdown or no lockdown, life goes on, right? People get sick. People die. In lockdowns, we have scenarios where, from a physical sense, we can have additional sickness, but certainly in a mental sense, it's not good for us either. But whatever you want to say about the vaccine in terms of, and I don't think we can argue with the comments that have been made that the vaccine is not a block to infection. That's not arguable. But what is certain is that it significantly reduces sickness, and it reduces death even further. The science, Mr. Speaker, also says that the vaccines do reduce transmissibility. They do reduce your ability to get infected. You may question how much, but the truth is they do. But the more important thing is that it prevents us from getting very sick. So I'm really disappointed to hear statements along with the narrative that it's an experimental thing. And the fear-mongering about the bills requiring people to be held and having this experimental thing injected into their arms. Nothing of the sort, Mr. Speaker. First of all, the premise or suggestion that it's experimental is clearly wrong. There was a time when you might have said that. But it has, at least the vaccine that we utilize, the Pfizer vaccine, has full FDA approval. It is now being injected in billions of people. So let's dismiss this suggestion, this fear-mongering, this adding to this narrative, which is undermining confidence. Mr. Speaker, just as people are tired or were tired and were complacent about all the rules and having to comply with the quarantines, yes, I know people are tired of having or hearing about vaccines. That's the way it is with medicine. People are tired of it. I know that. But I don't believe that that means we should stop trying to maximize vaccinations in this country. Mr. Speaker, the Delta variant has been the biggest factor in changing our perspective on that. Because that is far more infectious than the original, the Alpha variant, and any of the others so far. And I hope there are none that come along that are more infectious or worse. But that variant, which has become ubiquitous pretty much around the world now, is a very good reason why we need to push for a maximum distribution of vaccinations. Mr. Speaker, the science says more recently that the Delta variant is as infectious as the measles or chicken pox. That's pretty significant. The suggestions are that in the context of measles and recent studies in the last couple of years, because this is not the first time that we've had controversy around vaccines. It has existed for a long time. But the truth is, imagine how different the world might be today if we hadn't put our faith in vaccines, a third of our families might not be around. If the smallpox vaccine wasn't, yeah, I mightn't be here. I might disappear if that reality changed back in time. The smallpox vaccine was a lifesaver for generations and generations of people. And it wasn't until it was actually mandated that it made a difference, that it eliminated smallpox, which had a fatality rate of somewhere around 30%. Mr. Speaker, the MERS virus that existed, I don't remember the timing on it, but I want to say sometime, well, let's say safely sometime in the last decade, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. That had a fatality rate of 36%. Imagine if you combine that fatality rate with the Delta transmissibility rate. Thank God Delta has no fatality rate like that. But whatever the fatality rate specifically is, Mr. Speaker, it is too high for us to take a chance with in doing what we have to do, because we have to reopen. We have to move forward, but we have to do it in the safest possible way. And maximizing vaccinations, to me and to this government, Mr. Speaker, is the safest way to do that. That's why we have taken the steps we have in relation to this bill. It is not, Mr. Speaker, that we have an issue with people here on work permits, people who are permanent residents. That's not Cayman, Mr. Speaker. We value and respect the people who have come to this country and contributed and helped to build this country into the great country that it is today, Mr. Speaker. And I'm really, really offended by comments uttered yesterday describing this as an us against them. As my colleague, the Minister for Health, said in her contribution earlier today, Mr. Speaker, this is not about us against them. They are respected, they are valued. Even those people out there yesterday who were pounding pots and pans saying they wanted choice, which really meant we don't want a vaccine. I respect even the young Caymanian lady, Mr. Speaker. I respect her. The young lady who posted on Facebook saying that she's tired of hearing me talking about vaccines and she wants somebody with COVID to come and cough in my face. You know, I understand the frustrations. I understand it. I wouldn't advise her to come and try to do it herself because I'm not going to be that receptive to it. But I understand. I understand, Mr. Speaker. But I want the people of this country, I want anybody who may have an issue with this bill or these two bills to understand that this is nothing to do with disrespecting them. This comes from a position of care. This comes from a place of wanting the best for this country. That's where it comes from, Mr. Speaker, I want the best, and my colleagues, my government wants the best for this country. And we are pushing very hard to try to achieve that, Mr. Speaker. So all this promotion of us against them on the basis that what we're doing is divisive, well, pursuing that narrative, adopting that narrative, promoting that narrative, that is divisive. That is divisive, Mr. Speaker. Because we don't come from that position. I want the people of this country to understand that we are doing this for the benefit of this country, for our people, for our future, our ability to reopen and move forward, Mr. Speaker. Many of my colleagues and some across the other side have talked about the real impacts on people that are happening every day and getting more complicated and worse. We have families, Mr. Speaker, who have been in isolation, been tested out of isolation, and then within a couple of days they end up back in isolation again because they have other family connections. So that's an issue that we have been looking at, Mr. Speaker. We then have people in the private sector, employers in the private sector who, and I understand this, small businesses have a challenge at the best of times, really. But in the current circumstances, those challenges are exacerbated by the circumstances. So I understand where they're coming from, but I want them to work with us. I want them to find a way to contact us before they tell their employees, you're on your own. That, Mr. Speaker, is a difficult situation for people who may have one breadwinner in the house. It's difficult enough with two. It's an impossible situation with one. So I know there are members in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, who have personally gone and bought groceries and taken them to people's doors, put them down on the step and knock on the door and walk away so they can pick them up. Because every one of us care that much about our constituents. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, your constituents in West Bay, West, they're all our people too.
Yes. True enough.
The member from Bordentown East.
Thank you.
Huh?
Thank you, sir.
I get no problem.
Thank you.
Get some more groceries.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I'm going to give you groceries. Emily, you okay? You okay? But I'm saying your people that you have to help like that are our people too. Yeah. So we have got to find a solution. And these are some of the challenges that we are presented with immediately. We didn't walk in the government and find a plan for this. There are issues that we find as we move along, and you said so yourself, member from Bordentown East, in your contribution. You said these situations arise, and you have to find policy solutions or otherwise to resolve them. Certainly, if they are widespread issues, you've got to find policy solutions and implement those policies. So these are issues that we have to deal with right now. There are a plethora of interwoven issues that exist. And I don't want people to feel, and I don't want anybody who may have an issue with these bills to feel that we are just exercising power because we have the power. We are not doing that. We're not doing that at all. We have thought about these issues, Mr. Speaker. In other circumstances, we would prefer not to have to think about having to do something like this. But the truth is, as high as our vaccination rate is, it needs to be maintained and it needs to be improved. The studies around measles, Mr. Speaker, suggested that a 90% vaccination rate in the community was what was needed to quell an outbreak of measles. When it dropped down to like 87 or 88%, they started having these outbreaks of measles. Children, as commonplace as measles used to be when we were growing up, you know, and well, all the other things too, measles, mumps, rubella, all that. But as commonplace as those things were, I don't remember people dying from it. But people do die. People get complications and they do die from things like measles. And if Delta is as contagious as measles or chickenpox, and you need a vaccination distribution of around 90% to quell a measles outbreak, then what does that say for Delta? Doesn't it suggest the same thing, Mr. Speaker? So I don't think we can take solace in the fact that we have a world-leading vaccination rate, because none of the other countries that have tried to reopen with high vaccination rates have succeeded. We have a higher vaccination rate than the rest of them, but so what? We may just be that country that ends up being part of the statistic that failed. So this is why we are trying so hard, Mr. Speaker. This is why we annoy people on press conferences, telling them, begging them, pleading with them to get vaccinated. Because there is no question that the vaccine prevents people from getting very sick. Mr. Speaker, I've had quite a number of emails and WhatsApp messages and the like, and I have responded to quite a few of them. I've even responded to some of those that were the sort of form letters. I humorously had one from someone which left in all the square brackets where it said, insert your name here. Below that, they put their name, and left in the square brackets with insert your name here. And where it said, choose one or two or three, the square brackets and the or was left in there. Where it had the address, it had square brackets address, and they put the address below that. So anyway, that's a campaign. I understand that, and that's fine. That's how democracy works, Mr. Speaker. As bad as it is, it's what they say is the least worst system of government.
After you've tried all the methods.
After you tried everything else. And the folks that were out there yesterday, I've been where they were, Mr. Speaker. I've been where they were.
I remember.
You remember too? I know you remember. And I've been there with other people in this house, let me just say. Right? I'm not going to say anything else other than that. I had company, Mr. Speaker. So I know what it's like. I know they have the right to do it, and we have to accept that. And we respect that. I bear no malice to them. I have no issue with their rights to protest and express their view. And I have, as I said, interacted with quite a few of them. Unfortunately, all too often, when it starts off very good, you know, Mr. Speaker, they ask some good questions. And for those that, take the time, they go into some of the science, and then, it sort of drifts. You can sort of see it happening as you're reading along, Mr. Speaker. It drifts into, the government, instead of focusing on vaccines, which are experimental, and which don't work, and which don't prevent infection, the government should be focusing on prophylactics, on therapies. Okay. Mr. Speaker, very recently we've had some good news. We've had announcements about pills from Merck, which they say cuts the rate of death in half. That's good news. And Mr. Speaker, these types of things are going to develop over time. The question is, what time do we have? Mr. Speaker, my crystal ball disappeared a long time ago. I can't tell where it is, who has it. I know they can't be using it. Either that or it don't work no more. But when we as a government have sat down and talked about these issues and tried to look forward, because that's what we do. I created a Ministry of Sustainability specifically for that purpose, Mr. Speaker, so that we could make decisions today which were in the best interest of the people 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Because that's how sustainability works. We have to be taking that kind of approach. But try as we might, we can't, there's no answer, there's nobody who can tell you when is the optimal time. If we all knew that COVID would disappear in 6 months' time, I guarantee you every one of us would be in favor of staying locked down until 6 months from now, and we'd eke it out, and we'd manage, and then reopen. Boom, everything would be fine. But it ain't happening. Not likely. Not unless you believe in fairy tales. So we have to deal with the reality, Mr. Speaker, and we have to plan how we are going to successfully reopen this country, how we are going to move forward with vaccines as a central part. And then as things come up, whether it's, that Merck pill, or whether it's something new that gets announced next month or the month after that, the better they are, the more promise they'll have. But we don't have the time to sit around and wait and hope with our fingers crossed. We have thousands of people in this country who are terribly impacted, who have lost the ability to earn a living. We have, I don't know where they're coming from, sir, but I haven't left this island since February 18th of 2020. But I've had lots of emails from people in the last 5 months complaining about this thing or that, about the quarantine process and all that. And then they're telling me, sir, listen, this is the 5th time I've had to quarantine under these circumstances, and I'm not taking it anymore. So they're traveling. People are traveling. Business people are traveling. And people are traveling for vacations. I don't know. I haven't felt the need to do that, sir, other than go to one of those 2 gems that are to the east there, Cayman Brack, Little Cayman. Yeah. Before all of this, even before I got elected in 2013 for the first time, I was a proponent of domestic tourism. That gentleman in the corner over there, who used to be the former Minister for Tourism, used to go try to visit him all the time. Or at least contribute. No, that hasn't stopped. But we have a lot of people who are wanting to travel.
Honorable Premier, I'm wondering whether you would countenance a break at this time.
Yes, sir, I would be happy to do so.
Let us take our luncheon break and be back for 1:30, as we want to complete business, including committee stage,
yes, sir.
Today. So we take a luncheon break, and let's try to get back in at 1:30.